Hello and welcome. My name is Carrie Varela, and it's my pleasure to be here with Michaela Daystar and Bronwen Logan, and we are the Reiki Women Podcast. And today, we have so much fun talking about a lot of different things within the world of Reiki, and I think we'll find that this topic today is super interesting. It's going to probably spur a lot of really interesting thought for you. It certainly has for us. It'll be a great thing to talk about. So we're talking about Reiki and placebo, and the distinction between what is healing within the context of placebo, how a placebo effect on our mind and emotions and awareness might spur healing, and how that's all interrelated with Reiki. So I'd love to give that question over to either of you. Who wants to talk first about the interesting correlation between Reiki and placebo?
Wow. I can start with a definition of the placebo effect. And this is kind of stemming out of the conversation we had 2 episodes ago on Reiki and healing, which of course is an incredibly important and very broad topic that we predicted would have, follow-on conversations. And this was one of the topics that we mentioned briefly. And so the placebo effect can be defined, this is from a study on the neuroscience of placebo, can be defined as the placebo effects are beneficial effects that are attributed to the brain-mind responses to the context in which a treatment is delivered, rather than to the specific actions of the drug or treatment. So beneficial responses, impacts that are measurable in a patient that have to do with the context of the treatment rather than the specific drug or treatment that is being administered. And oftentimes we think about that as a situation where they're, studying or researching a treatment, and some people are given the specific drug or treatment that they are researching, and the other half of the people are told they're being given that treatment but are receiving just water or not the treatment. And there's a certain percentage of those folks that nevertheless, even though they have not received the treatment, see improvement in their symptoms, in their condition. And it's something that has fascinated science for a long time, in medicine. And I'm really curious to see what comes forward as far as what we can say about the workings of Reiki inside of our system, and this observable phenomenon that is observed in medicine. So I'll just kind of start us there with that definition. And Bronwen, I'd love to know what comes up for you.
Well, I didn't know that much about placebo until I saw a show on Netflix possibly called Placebo. Anyway, it was by Michael Mosley. He's that diet guide guy. He's from the UK, and he set up a research piece in Blackpool, and he got 100 people who had back pain, and he gave them all the same pill, but he told them that some of them would have a placebo, and I think he said 50% of them would have a placebo and the other 50% not. They all got placebos. They all got just ground up rice, and over 50% of the people had some form of benefit from taking the placebo. So it was a really interesting thing to watch, and to get an idea that, okay, so it's not that people are making it up. So what they were saying is that it's there's a couple of things that are happening, that natural opioids are being released, and they're morphine-like opioids are being released in the body when we allow, sort of what you were saying, Michaela, when we allow our natural healing to take place. I always talk about that thing, like when we cut our finger, and that the body knows what to do to make us better. And we support that by putting a Band-Aid over it or whatever we're doing. Yeah. And the body goes through this whole process, an amazing process, to actually bring us to a place of balance that may not be, we could call it wholeness, but it might be wholeness with a scar. Yeah. So it's bringing us, we're allowing ourselves to find a way around or through so that we can best function. And it seems to me that something like the placebo is really, it's fascinating for people who work in medicine, because they're working at trying to create something specific, obviously, to do something specific. Michael Mosley said that what he does is, if he's got like pain and he takes a Panadol or any of those things, that at the same time he consciously thinks to himself, I'm doing this because it's going to help me get better. So he's actually using the fake medicine, if you like, and then the real medicine, which is our own natural body, to make ourselves better. And so he's taking benefit from both of these aspects. But it does make me question, how then do pharmaceutical companies test things? Because if they're using placebo as a zero mark, to against a form of some medicine that they're trying to work out whether it works or not, then how do they know whether the medicine is actually working or whether it's actually placebo? I can't see that they can actually cut a line through that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Oh, one other thing. So what Michael Mosley did to actually make it work was he researched the color of the pill that people took. He got everybody in, white doctors' outfits. He had a little clinic that looked absolutely perfect, even down to the magazines that people would read when they were waiting to go in to get their prescription for the placebo pill. Everything he worked out to help people relax into this idea that they were going to be healed.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and connects directly with that piece in the definition that I read around context, that it's the context of the treatment that is contributing to the benefit rather than the treatment itself. And so, we put ourselves into a environment that feels supportive to healing for us, whatever that might mean for us. And then that cues our system that, okay, it's safe to relax and to do the work of healing, because our body, our mind, our emotions, our heart are designed to bring us back into balance, right? This is one of the principles that I always teach to when we start talking about Reiki, is that our system is designed to come into balance, and there's endless things that interrupt that process and to get in the way of it and to, distract us from it. But fundamentally, our system is designed to rebalance itself. And so oftentimes the context that we're in is what determines whether or not we can allow our system to do that work. I think the structures around giving birth are a really amazing example. When we go into a kind of bustling hospital situation, our system gets triggered that there's stressful things going on and it's a distraction, and our body, closes down some of the natural mechanisms of giving birth. Whereas if we go into a very calm, quiet, dark, beautiful, loving space, our body relaxes and is like, okay, I know how to do this, and, has a better chance of having a positive natural experience. And when we think about context, what is the context for healing in terms of the system of Reiki? Well, we have a description of that context, and it's the precepts, right? The precepts describe a situation where we're free from attachment to fear, to anger. We're grateful, we're true to ourselves, we're diligent, we're compassionate to ourselves and to others. And, a placebo can give us that, right? When we believe that we're being ministered to by a medicine that we trust, being given to us by people we trust, in a context that, as you described, Bronwen, has been designed to make us feel like we can trust it, right? Then we release some of our fear about whatever the condition is that we're dealing with. We release some of our anger about having to deal with the situation. We feel gratitude for the treatment that we're receiving and the context that we're in. We feel compassionate for the experience that we're having and for the people who are helping us with it. And so, it really makes me wonder, it makes me appreciate even more deeply, the precepts as something that don't not only give us instructions on how to conduct ourselves, not only describe outcomes that we can experience if we practice the system of Reiki, but also act to create an actual container of context within which our system can heal itself. Yeah. And that's something I've never thought before until this minute. And it's exciting to explore. So Carrie, I'd love to know what comes up for you in all of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it speaks a lot of ways just to the power of mind and the power of positive belief, and the placebo effect, I was doing some research on it, and, happens to, as much as 1/3 of the patients going through a study, all the way up to 60%. And so it's a huge factor to account for. It's not like a small thing. So I think we're right that there has been a turning of a mindset around the placebo effect. It used to be just thinking it was like kind of a dumb thing. Like, why do 60% of the people think that they're getting cured from a pill with rice? We're just so stupid. But there's actually a little bit of turning back towards more respectful relationships between patients and the power of healing. And seeing that, I think what you were saying, Michaela, is really poignant. That the Reiki precepts really, they condition us and they put us in a right mental and emotional space to do the work of healing. But a lot of times that's a big part of the battle. And so I can see how somebody going through a scientific study, so that they're also hopeful. They're hopeful that something is out there, that thing is going to help them. And it's just even like cultivating that energy of hope that there is healing accessible to somebody, that in and of itself can spur a healing reaction within people. They talk about the effect of, the placebo actually creating physiological effects on our body, like releasing hormones, so that it's actually quite measurable. And so I guess when I boil it down, I think of that faith is healing, and it's kind of cheesy, but to think that and there's something about Reiki in that, is that when we have hope, we have an insight, we have some intuition that something is going to help us, that can also be a form of spiritual guidance, can be a way of listening to our body too. And it's also really exciting to see that there's a lot of studies out there about Reiki, and it's showing that Reiki has a greater than placebo effect. For the most case, I think I was just looking up a research article that was summarizing a bunch of different studies on Reiki, and they summarized 20 different studies on Reiki, and they found that 14 out of the 20 that there was a palpable better than placebo effect of Reiki, of all the studies done on Reiki. There's 5 that had no difference and 1 that showed a negative effect. But I think you have to get really geeky and really scientific about those results too, because I know certain scientific studies on Reiki have done things for a very specific condition, and sometimes they haven't really passed that placebo effect. So, I mean, it's all very interesting, I think, but it just points to the power of our mind, our thoughts, putting our energy and insight around the idea of healing, being willing to make the effort towards it. And, whether the effect is placebo or it's pharmacological, or in the case of Reiki, if it's more about relieving stress, I think we got to celebrate all those little wins along the way in our journey with healing.
It occurs to me that there's actually 2 different questions that we're kind of dancing with here. One, I think you were just speaking to, Carrie, is Reiki placebo?
Yeah.
Right? Like that's a question. Is the application of something like Reiki the same as giving somebody a rice pill or a sugar pill? In other words, not actually giving them anything, the benefit is all because of the mind-body connection, and their mind creates the conditions for them to feel better because of the context of I'm in a healing session, right? So that's question number 1. Yes. The other question, which was actually the one that I was thinking about, and so I kind of love that we have different even points of focus in this conversation. The other is, when people receive a placebo in a medical study, for example, and they experience a benefit, their symptoms are relieved. They haven't been given a medicine. They've been given something that's neutral, but they experience a reduction in their symptoms or even a removal of their symptoms. Is it the case that what is happening is an activation of Reiki or something like Reiki inside of their system? Meaning the removal of the fear, the removal of the barrier of thinking, I'm not being helped. I am being helped by this medicine. Does that relax their system enough that their natural ability to balance themselves, which is part of how I would describe what Reiki is, right? It's this force inside of us that animates us and that helps us to come back into balance by connecting us with life and with resources. Does that get activated by the receiving of the placebo? So those are two different questions, right? One on the side of what happens in the study when an actual placebo pill, for example, is given, and one, the question, is Reiki itself placebo? So I just wanted to name that there's kind of two different sides of this conversation, both of which are very interesting to me.
I might be wrong here, but it sounds like what you're saying, Michaela, is sort of like an answer to what Carrie was suggesting, well, questioning. Yeah. And I think the question is a really good one. When I first started doing the system, when I first started practicing, someone said to me that what I was doing was called the grandmother's cure. And it was said in a way that wasn't necessarily positive, which is terrible. But what they were trying to say to me is, oh, it's just I don't know, it's just like, you're just doing what we've always done, right? Which is hilarious because, how long has pharmacology, for example, been around? Not that long, right? And what we've always done, is tens of thousands of years of self-healing. Yeah. So I was trying to come to terms with what this person was saying and thinking about what a grandmother does. And a grandmother is doing all those things in a way that you were talking about, Michaela. Yeah. So a grandmother is giving us a safe place, is making us feel comfortable, is taking away any anger or worry, is giving us love, being compassionate, and we are feeling just really nurtured and grateful in that space. Yeah. So, this is typically what would happen if a little child comes running in and says, I've hurt myself, and then that the grandmother is there and or whoever, and gives love to that child and care, gives them a cuddle, gives them a kiss, and puts their hands maybe on that place. We always say that the system of Reiki, working with Reiki, is a birthright. It's not something that we've created. What's been created by Mikao Usui is a system to help us be more conscious of Reiki. Right?
Yeah.
It's not something that never existed before. It's always existed. It's us, but we cover it up and we don't allow ourselves to let it do its thing. And there was something really interesting that the doctor said in the Michael Mosley thing. He said that the people that really felt the benefit of the placebo were the people who were open to new experiences. Yeah. And that little quote, it reminded me of what I've always said and what I teach when people do Reiki treatments. Yeah. So when I do a Reiki treatment, I say to myself, and I ask my client to say to themselves, I'm open, same word, to receive whatever it is that I might need at this exact moment in time. And, it is that thing of being open. And when we talk about open, we talk about our heart. Yeah, really. And it's, we talk about our mind. We can talk about all of us, but when our mind and our bodies come together and we have that beautiful blend of everything just being calm, working well, feeling safe, everything perfect, our hearts have the opportunity to be more open and free. And that to me could be placebo, but it's also the system of Reiki. I actually don't think that there is a difference in a way, except the system of Reiki is teaching us how to work with that more consciously. So obviously there is more going on there, and we have ways to work into that. But I think really placebo is a birthright. Reiki is a birthright.
It seems like part of what, the documentary you watched, some of the articles that I read, and just how my understanding of placebo has evolved over time, really does land on what you just said, that it doesn't matter whether or not the placebo is real, right? Like, because when I first learned about this concept, it was like the placebo is fake, right? It's fake medicine. And so it's not intended to cause any impact on the illness. It's there to, make some form of blind study so that they can, reduce the way in which people's perception of what they're receiving impacts the benefit when they're trying to study a particular treatment. So the placebo is fake. But then we observe this incredible statistic that Carrie shared, that 30 to 60% of people who receive a placebo benefit from it, right? So how can we say it's fake? But the thing is, the mechanism that's causing that impact is different than the mechanism of the medicine that's being studied, right? And so what's the mechanism of the placebo, right? It's what you're describing. It's the state of mind, the state of being, the state of physical being and mental, emotional being that says, I'm loved, I'm supported, I'm held, I'm safe, I am resourced, and I know how to deal with the situation, right? And then our system activates what we're designed to do, which is to bring us back into balance. And, again, that to me is the mechanism of Reiki. That's what we are talking about when we're talking about Reiki as a healing process. And so in a sense, when we say, is Reiki placebo? The answer could very well be an emphatic yes. But placebo is not nothing, right? It's not fake, right? It's just not the pharmaceutical medicine that is being contrasted to it in
the
these
synthetic
studies.
Medicine.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that the discourse that I've seen, and I'm not in the world of medicine, although my husband is that it has turned a corner, and it used to be fake. That used to be the discussion. It used to kind of downplay the effect of placebo, and now it's really been more of a scientific inquiry, which I think speaks to a scientific mind. And for me, I'm an ultimate rationalist in the sense that, like, I think about, like, yes, there was these ways that we thought healing was effectuated in the past, like bloodletting and all of these other things that were pretty archaic and obviously didn't work. So I respect the process of science trying to prove something, but it's actually more problematic than I think we're really aware of. I mean, I think that science has built a pretty sophisticated system around proving something, but yet, like so much of life, it's still so esoteric. It's still so client specific. There's no cookie cutter in the world of healing. And it was an interesting thought that I was researching recently, is that within the Western system of medicine, there's no real defined definition of healing. And so in a whole system that's built around curing people, making people better, we still don't really understand the mechanism of healing, or it's not been really, pinned down as this is what it is. And so I think it's really important that we do include the placebo in our work with our clients and give, like that, like Michaela was saying, a really rich structure within which that people can step into their own ability in their body to heal themselves, their own ability. Also, I mean, I work with people with physical stuff for sure within the system of Reiki, but I work with a lot of people who have emotional issues, have mental issues. They're struggling with the complexities of life. And though that builds up as stress and pressure in our system too. And so when I can work with somebody and just give them some insight or some ability for them to tap into their own wisdom, it's really profound. It like turns on this light switch within them, and and empowers people. And so I think when we can have like a positive look at placebo, um, it does lead into just really like tuning into our own ability within ourselves to heal, right? And to look at that like quite powerfully, and to remember that we can do that up to 60% of the time for ourselves.
But I mean, you know, talking about measurable, which is what you're talking about there, yeah, something being measurable. Well, I've always found that with the system of Reiki, it's been a difficult one to work out the measurable thing, because, as you know, what we've all been saying, it's just that it's very much up to us, the healing. So we have to be open for the healing. So it's not like a doctor can come along really and go, you're healed, yeah, and or a Reiki practitioner come along and go, you're healed. It doesn't work that way, and not within the system of Reiki, which is what we're talking about right now, right? So and if we look at it as being, say you know, that we are working with placebo, when I go into when I do a Reiki treatment, you know, I go into a meditative space. And this is where I think this is where we see the benefits of the system of Reiki. So it's helping us. So by accessing, having tools to be able to do that. And so if I'm in that space, I'm more open and more free to allow healing to happen for me. And if we remember what Usui apparently did, according to Hiroshi Doi, is that he would sit with his clients and clients, I'm sure he didn't call them clients, whatever, yeah, people who came to him, and he would sit with them, and together they would be in that space together. He would be in that space, and they would be in that space with him. And that was healing. That was coming into balance. And because he shared that openness, and they felt that openness and were there for him, to be with him. So they have that intention to be a part of that. And then in that space, so through the system of Reiki, so in that space that he's created through practicing, then healing, whatever that might be for that person, can happen.
Yeah.
So just to think about measurable, just before I move on, I just wanted to, so we can't measure what that's going to be for that person. Yeah. And I don't really want to have to measure which science, you know, Carrie, is not going to like me for saying that, but I don't want to have to measure that. What do I have to measure that, for God's sake? You know, if someone feels better, I'm really happy for them. And, you know, if they get some benefit from that, I'm really happy for them. But what I think they have been able to measure, if we look at it from a scientific perspective and looking at the system of Reiki, they have been able to measure well-being. So not necessarily, yeah, I mean, you know, forget about all the other aspects of things that can change for us, but our well-being has been, as far as I'm aware, been positively measured within the system of Reiki. So possibly there's a lot of reasons for that, and it could be that possibly it's because we as say I'm the client, you know, for example, in a Reiki treatment, why would my well-being be better? There's a lot of reasons. One, I've taken time for myself. I've been relaxed and calm and in this meditative space. Yeah, that I'm learning how to be more open and to let go of all the crap that I'm holding on to. There are so many reasons why working with the system of Reiki could support our well-being. And I can see that, as far as science is concerned, they're really happy that they could measure something like that.
Well, and what you're describing, starting with the way in which Usui is described as holding sessions of being together in a space of Reiki, again, that's back to setting the context. That placebo is a benefit that is ascribed to the context within which a treatment is shared rather than the treatment itself. And, when we think about the context that we set for ourselves and the mindset that we set around each person's capacity to heal themselves, that's incredibly important. It was one of the most profound mindset shifts that occurred for me. Honestly, when I started studying with you, Bronwen, 5 years ago or so, had been working within Western Reiki models for quite some time, where, my belief and my mindset was that I am doing something that is healing somebody else, right? I'm giving them a medicine, right? I'm handing them a pill that has a medicine in it, and they're going to take that. It's going to heal them. And then the shift in mindset that the healing exists inside of them. I'm not giving them a medicine. I'm holding a space. I'm creating a context inside of which their system remembers, right? Clears away those distractions and remembers its own capacity, and then takes up that capacity for healing in ways that address whatever it is specifically that they're dealing with that I don't have to know anything about, right? That we're together as a collaboration, creating a context for healing that is because of the practice, right? It's because of being so centered and so rooted inside of a trust, inside of a feeling of being bigger than my own tiny self, a feeling of being connected to resources outside of myself and the wider web of life, that all of that creates a context within which our natural healing capacity can happen. I'm not handing them a medicine that then they take, right? We are sitting together inside of our own medicine. And so I think I'm talking myself into the idea that Reiki is placebo.
Me
and placebo
too.
is powerful medicine.
I know.
Right?
How exciting is that?
Well, and
From
I
a
think
completely non-medical point of view. Sorry.
Yeah, and I mean, I think what's so funny too is just like it's our mindset, and our ways of interacting with the world. And so for somebody who really likes numbers and more things that feel objective to them,
Yeah.
Science is an incredibly sophisticated system to help us understand those things. I think it's important to measure the success of something. But what it's coming to me too is that how we try to bring something that's subjective into the world of objectivity. And even something as simple as pain, like my husband deals with it all the time as an osteopath. It's like somebody's like, oh, I got pain in my hip. But the thing is that our brain, it's like the connection of our brain to our hip. Like he can say, you know what, it's really not your hip, it's your knee. And like that there's these synapses, there's these disconnections between our body. And so even the idea, like I would assume in a medical study, I don't know, I've never done one or been a part of one or led one, but probably one of the questions would be, is your pain better? On a scale of 1 to 10, what was it before and what is it now? And even that, it's an objective question, but it's still really exploring something that can be very subjective and very up and down. And I think pain is like that. It can be very consistent, but it also can be here and there. Well, anyway, so I'm just talking myself into a corner about that. But I think it's just so interesting how for me, it comes back to a more esoteric question, and in a more esoteric way of being in relationship with these things, is that I know that whenever I have sought out healing, whether it be through counseling, whether it be through Reiki, whether it be through yoga, And even like as a yoga student, I've taken, I don't know, thousands and thousands of yoga classes. I can say at some point in an hour-long class, it doesn't matter who leads the practice, at some point there'll be this like magic there. There'll be this feeling, this emotion that arises, or this release that happens. And same when I've done like counseling sessions with people, or and gone to counseling myself, really seeking out an answer, seeking out something. And and it usually isn't exactly where I think it's going to come, but like I can look back at those moments and say, oh, that was the real message I needed to hear that day, or that was real insight that gave me the perspective that I could just move more mindfully or with more wisdom into my life. And it gave me a feeling like I was benefited. Same with Reiki. So I just don't think that
that's because you're open to it, right, Carrie?
So open. Yeah. I'm open.
Yeah.
But I've worked with people who aren't open, and it is hard when a client comes and they're just like total skeptics, and you prove to me that this works, and I don't really work well with that kind of mindset. So I'm just like, just try to explain what I do in a way that can reach them where they're at, and hopefully take them to another step forward.
It occurs to me that this conversation around placebo could potentially be a way of talking with such a person and giving an example that comes from medicine, an example that comes from a scientific context that we're familiar with. They may or may not agree with or believe or buy into the point of view that Reiki is placebo and operates in XYZ ways. But it could be an interesting way to talk about it, to contextualize it in terms of what is actually happening, right? When somebody walks away from a Reiki session feeling better.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's fascinating. On a totally different subject, but maybe it'll lead to something else another time. Just something that you were saying, Carrie. I just read a beautiful quote, which I can't remember the exact words, but Virginia Woolf was saying about writing. And she was saying that when she writes or when she wrote and she got it right, she said there was a right place for it to be. When she got it right, she knew that was it. That was, it was like there was always a place for those words to be. And they've just that when she found them, then that was right. Yeah. And it sort of was outside of herself. It wasn't her as such. It was just that she could put the words down, but there was something bigger at play there. And I don't know, that sometimes, that you were just saying about, when you're open and just the right things falling into place. And it's like life, isn't it? And it's sort of what we're working towards when we practice the system of Reiki. We're trying to allow ourselves to fall into the right place at the right time, to be there, to be open enough to experience that rightness.
Yeah. That feels like a really lovely place to land, right? The openness to experience that rightness of being in this practice and being in collaboration with others in this practice. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it's so important to keep that in mind, as that's the real goal of what we're seeking to find, either in our self-practice or with others, just helping them find that. And I love Yasui's word when he just says, restoring our heart and mind, our heart and mind. And that rings so true, because I think we can all experience that, like, when we work with our clients or we work with ourselves, we know what it feels like when we're in that space of like our original heart and mind. And nobody can really give you that, but we can support each other to find it for ourselves. And I do think that, when you're in a place of healing, it's so important, or in a place where you feel like you need some support in your healing, to reach out and connect with somebody else, whether it is Western medicine, whether it is a Reiki practitioner, whether it is a yoga class, or however it is that you feel like you can be supported in that moment. And I think it's really important to follow that intuition.
Absolutely.
So, well, thank you all so much to all of our listeners for joining us today. I hope this conversation spurred some interesting thoughts. Thought about how you can explain Reiki to others, how you can think about the placebo effect, and whether or not it's Reiki inside of that. We'd love to hear your experiences around Reiki and placebo, or your thoughts on the matter. So feel free to comment on this video, share it with somebody else that you think would enjoy it. And we love and appreciate all of you who listen. And thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you all so much. We will catch you next week.